Welcome to the podcast, Sachin. Thank you so much for doing this. How are you?
Thank you, Bipin. Thanks a lot. And it's a pleasure to be here on your podcast.
Absolutely. I would have gone ahead with your introduction, but you are into so many things. So I would rather let you do that. Just give us and the viewers a brief idea about who you are and what are you doing currently.
Well, thank you. So I'll keep it short. Basically, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've been here in Indonesia for 27 years. I got here way back in 1997 when this country was still under a dictatorship. And my journey has been over many years. I've been a serial entrepreneur in various forms. Of course, the basic one is media. I've been a media owner for a long time. Then I had a short stint at one of the large media groups in Indonesia. And then in 2016 is when I started expanding my footprint from beyond one company. I got into education and skilling. Then I got into other media platforms, and then also into the Economic Forum series. So the Indonesia Economic Forum is actually where I spend most of my time.
Sure.
And which has now grown into the ASEAN Economic Forum. So in short, COVID platform is the one that when COVID hit, I would say it's a platform for a lot of people to change what they do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was one of them. And I decided that expanding my portfolio is something I should do to mitigate the risk of something like COVID can bring.
Sure.
And that's when I started expanding the group into a few more companies. Now the group has about 9 companies doing various kinds of things.
Sure.
We are in 3 markets: Indonesia, Singapore, and in India.
Very nice. Absolutely. No, I mean this is a perfect start.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of things to unpack over here. The overarching theme of the podcast would be purely from perspective understanding Indonesia from an expat's lens, and we'll try to give out a pointers wherein the audience get an idea of what does it take to succeed as an expat in Indonesia. Look, I mean, you spent 27 years, so you're no longer an expat, I would rather say. But still, I mean, there's a massive body of work which has brought you where you are today, right? So let's start with understanding this whole group dynamics, right? So you have PT Chairos, and within that, you have these multiple organizations, right? Let's spend some time on each of them and what do they do and how do they come together, right? So let's start with the forums which you're talking about, right?
Sure.
So there's India-Indonesia Forum, there's Indonesia Economic Forum, then there's Asian Economic Forum. Talk to us about that.
Okay. So I'll go back to a bit about what you asked about, as an expat.
Sure.
I think the key here is there are a lot of Indians who have succeeded in Indonesia. I'm just one of a few of them, right? The difference being that I'm not Indonesian, my passport is still Indian. So I am technically an expat.
Sure.
And I think to be in the media space, that's an important factor. Because I'm not Indonesian, I am seen as being more neutral and more, not aligned to any one side.
No biases.
No biases. And it's easier for me to be that if I am holding an Indian passport or any other passport.
Sure.
So being an expat has been an important part of my journey here that allows me access. That allows me to be friends with everyone. It allows me to be able to talk to all sides, especially the political side. That's important. And I think the economic forums grew because of that, because we were one of the few English language platforms in the market, which is now, this is 11th year.
Sure.
So that's something to be around for 11 years. And essentially what we tried to do with the economic forum was to be the voice of Indonesia in the English language space, because a lot of activities and events in Indonesia happen in Bahasa.
Sure.
That's mainly because of the familiarity of the participants in the language.
Sure.
They gravitate towards Bahasa. Even if you have an English event, eventually the discussion gravitates towards Bahasa. Audience also has a preference to listen in Bahasa. This was 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago. However, the young generation now, having been educated overseas and more familiar with English, thanks to all the digital platforms, YouTube and Facebook, etc., that barrier has reduced a lot. So English language is being more acceptable now, and the youth tend to understand a lot more on English initiatives. So the forums actually has always been to represent the voice of what's happening here in the English space, and also be able to address it from a non-partisan and unbiased way.
Sure.
So Indonesia Economic Forum obviously does that, because every year we have a series of roundtables, and we do also an annual forum, and then we have a host bunch of other activities that we do, including helping companies who want to come into the country.
Sure.
So we do market entry, specialization, etc. It automatically grew into having an India engagement, obviously.
Sure.
So we had the India Indonesia Business Forum, which was basically done in order to gravitate towards matters that are important to both countries. Now, of course, there's an INCHAM, which is the Chamber of Commerce for representing the, not only the diaspora, but the people who are involved in business.
Sure.
So these are all groups of companies that can come together and work together.
Of course.
That's how I see it. And the ASEAN Economic Forum happened just a year ago. Seeing the success of the Indonesia Economic Forum, we got invited by the Secretariat to help them set up the ASEAN Economic Forum, which has similar kind of a goal. Essentially, it is the industry connect. Means how do you connect policy, government, industry?
Sure.
And the missing link in most of these conversations with the government is always industry. Industry somehow sees a different value of interacting with the government, or sometimes there is a lack of understanding of some of the policies being implemented. Our job is to demystify that and simplify that and make it actionable, so that companies and government can look at each other and say, okay, this is what we're trying to achieve, and this is how we can actually work together. So we are like an industry interface. So all our forums are aimed at being an industry interface, how companies and all stakeholders can come together and look at how they can contribute to the growing of the economy.
Perfect, perfect. And what about the talent arm, the orbit thing? What exactly does that do?
So skilling, so there's a bit of a history here.
Sure.
I used to be mentored by President Habibi, because I was in media, and President Habibi was, how do I say, one of our heroes, the father of technology in the country, and I'm an engineer by qualification.
Sure.
So because he used to feature on my media network, we became like friendly, and he somehow took it upon himself to mentor me and give me ideas of what to do in media. And he always used to tell me that, you should be doing something to skill people in this country, because you come from India. And India is well known for being able to skill people, education, technology specific. India has been, well recognized all over the world, including the US, Silicon Valley, etc. So he always used to encourage me that you must get into skilling and help us skill the nation. So in 2016, I met with his son, Ilham Habibi, who is now my business partner. And we decided to start the Orbit Future Academy, aimed at skilling for future jobs.
Okay.
And you won't believe it, Habibi in 2016 told me that what you should be doing is AI.
In 2016?
2016. Wow. When it was not yet being
the buzzword that it is today.
Yeah. It is a buzzword around 2018. 2019 is when it started becoming a buzzword. Cloud, AI, these are all words that came out much later. But Vijay Habibi in 2016 had a look at what was happening around the world, and he told me, please go to India, bring some curriculum, try to find ways to skill people. So I went and I met with Intel Corporation, which started having programs to train young people, youth, in schools. So that's a big learning for me, because how do you even teach AI, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we had curriculum help from large companies. So Orbit became partner of Intel, a global training partner of Intel, as well as Microsoft, and is also the global training partner of AWS.
Sure.
So today, these three large companies help give curriculum and best practices and how to train youth.
So what's the model over here? I mean, purely a business model for Orbit.
So it is a B2B business platform for training, skilling, and we don't do B2C. So if you see, most of the training academies around the world are B2C.
Yes.
We do B2B, B2B2C, I would say. So we work, for example, with government, we work with large institutions, we work with CSR organizations, who will say that, look, I want to train 1,000 kids in this area, or 1,000 teachers need to be skilled here, or 800 people need to get this program. So we then scale up the program, people who are selected by those programs or those donors, if you could say donor. And the training is then delivered to them, and then we also manage the outcome of what happens to them. Do they get employed by the companies? Do they work, or are they already working in a company?
So you also help them with employment?
Yes. So we got a job portal, which is set up as a support service. It's not an
Sure.
independent job portal.
Sure.
But the support service is to be able to place people once they've gone through a program.
Okay.
But one principle we follow in Orbit is we only do short courses. Our longest course is about 6 months. We
Okay.
don't do anything longer than that. So
Okay.
we don't believe in the university model.
Hmm.
The second thing is that we don't train anything that's not needed at that moment.
Sure.
There are a lot of training and skilling programs which gives you a skill and then people have no idea what to do with it.
What to do with it? Correct.
And then people are underemployed. And this is the biggest problem of today. People have got skills, but they have no jobs. So we are very clear that we will only scale up in those areas where there are jobs. And that may change, right? Every year there may be new jobs, we'll have new programs. New jobs, new programs. But if there are no jobs, we don't do. So we don't do any skilling in robotics, for example. There are no robotics jobs
Sure.
at the moment. But one day there may be.
Yeah.
When there is,
You'll design a course and you'll start
design a course there.
Okay.
So it's very skills for future jobs. That's a tagline of the company as well.
Sure. I mean, I 100% agree with you on the fact that skilling and reskilling is a major problem. I think it is relevant for all emerging economies,
Yeah.
including India, which is the tech capital of the world. Having said this, the number of graduates, engineering graduates which are coming out, they're finding it very difficult to cope up with the current tech because the curriculums are so outdated.
Yes.
You're still learning C++ and .NET.
Correct.
When the world has moved way ahead, right?
Yeah.
Talk to us about your experience with this whole skilling program, right? I mean, in terms of impact, might not be numbers, but you would have had experiences, right? You've been doing this for now a good 8 years.
Yeah, that's
right. Talk to us about some of the outcomes, be it in terms of the scale of it, or numbers if you wish to.
Okay. So let's look at impact, right?
Sure.
So when I said that we don't do a long skilling program, so the graduate programs, you're not a believer of graduate programs, is a place we can add value. Of course, the programs do have value.
Yes.
But we don't add value to the graduate program, so we don't get into that. We get into modules which will help make that person employable.
Okay.
So I will give you a starting point. One of the large programs we kicked off with the Ministry of Education was skilling for teachers, where the teachers would go through a Microsoft certified program to be able to teach better in the classroom using technology.
Nice.
So this was post-COVID.
Nice.
So when COVID happened and everybody was in work from home or study from home mode, the teachers had no idea how to use Zoom platform or any of those things. And it was
I have sorry to
taken
cut
up
you.
on a challenge.
Yeah, sorry to cut you out there. So I have 3 teachers in my family.
Yeah.
Okay, and I have seen their struggle so closely during the pandemic. Be it with something as simple as sharing screen on Zoom and controlling the class.
Yes.
So when you said Zoom and Meet, I just had these flashbacks where I was just helping them to set up things.
You're right.
But yeah, absolutely.
So it's not
yeah.
just about using platform and also managing the learning environment, right? That's one part of it. But there are so many other small tools which will help them to keep a track of what's happening in the class. We call it 21st century skills for teachers.
Sure.
So Microsoft has this phenomenal program. We adopted that program and we went to the Ministry of Education. And now we have started training the teachers to be able to teach better in class. They get the certificate. It's a 3-month program. That's it.
Sure.
But now thousands of teachers have already gone through this program. Our goal is 1 million teachers, which will take us a few years. But that's a level of scale. So impact also comes when you have scale.
Correct.
If I only train 100 teachers, that's no impact.
Yeah.
But if I have a goal to train 1 million, I just need to get to about 30%. After that, people will start,
very incremental.
It'll start growing on its own.
Correct.
So we are on that journey of creating programs of large scale.
Sure.
The other programs is like Campus Merdeka, which is also with the Indonesian government. When COVID hit and people were having to stay home and not be able to go to university, Minister Nadiem Makarim came up with Campus Merdeka, which would allow students to spend a semester with an online university to learn a full semester, and they get course credits for it.
Sure.
Why is this important? Not because there was COVID and people couldn't go to university, therefore they had to learn something. Because they could have learned anything.
Anything, yeah.
But they learned technology skills which universities did not have teachers. They did not have lecturers in AI. They did not have lecturers in cloud computing. These are universities in Aceh, in remote areas, Papua, and and all these places. So secondary universities found it very useful that their students could go through and get a course 6 months in AI, in cloud computing, and many other technology courses.
Absolutely.
So it was about inclusivity, making education of technology inclusive to those who otherwise would have passed through university and not had this course.
Sure.
So we were one among many of the companies that joined hands with the government and we actually trained the students across 500 universities.
Wow.
And they all, during COVID days, of course, they had no other choice but to go online. But it's still continuing now, even though COVID's done with, and we have
so there's
still
there is a clear value.
There's a clear value. The program has now been made into a long-term program by the Indonesian government.
Sure.
But these are examples of how, if we had not had a chance to experiment and figure out what is the need of the hour, and if we were following a model which was the typical standard edtech model, we may not have tried all these new things.
True. So I mean, in a nutshell, COVID actually changed the direction a lot for the whole skilling program for you.
Skilling program.
Let's close this education loop, right? What are your thoughts on the current education landscape in Indonesia? Let's talk about the loopholes. Let's talk about the improvement areas out here. You're closely in this domain. What do you think? Where are we as a country in Indonesia in terms of education?
Okay, so this is the 4th largest education market in the world, mainly because of the population. There are 50 million students at any given point of time. It's a large number, but 4-5 million teachers. Now, the challenge of Indonesia has always been, what do you do with people once they get educated? Underemployment has been the #1 challenge here. So, taxi drivers, ojek drivers and all of them, they actually have a university degree. Do they need that in order to ride a motorcycle or ride a car? No. But it puts food on the table, right? So the earnings of a Gojek driver is good enough for them to not take a job which is matching their education because you make enough to make a living. And making a living is more important. And that is actually a fault of the system. Of why is it that people are being trained in things which they don't need and their jobs are not matched to it? And it's mainly because the education system has been developed, you could say, almost blind. There's a quota system. Every university has got this faculty and that faculty, 40 students here, 50, they fill up their quota. It is rarely mapped with other jobs for them later. The need. And this, no doubt, it happens everywhere. Every country has this problem. It's not
I
only
think
here.
most emerging countries
all have this problem. And the requirement for those people to do additional, maybe a master's or maybe get a job with nothing to do with the education they did, but they get the job mainly because they know somebody somewhere or they had an opportunity for a job. So even employers here don't really look for the qualification because they know the problem. They look for aptitude, they look for ability to learn. They value other traits in a candidate to hire. I'm sure you know the same thing, right? You're just happy that they've done a degree.
Correct.
What degree have they done doesn't matter so much as long as the person shows aptitude.
True.
So where does the person develop his aptitude? Is in short courses. So if they have short scaling programs and they learn small things here and there, they'll have an aptitude towards being in that sector. If you want to join banking, you just need to do a 3-month course in banking. It doesn't matter what you did in your undergraduate.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So this is a system failure, actually, in the way I look at it. So how can universities adapt and change? It depends if they have faculty. I mean, many universities do not have lecturers to train in the new things.
Well, that's a massive problem, right?
It's a massive problem.
And because what you're trying to do is you're trying to fit in a class based on what the university is capable of teaching.
It's capable of teaching.
Rather than what the country needs in the next few years.
Exactly. Now, this problem is difficult to exit from. So, universities, lecturers itself need to be trained up and skilled up. And that is even more a bigger thing because
Bigger challenge.
So there is a role for organizations like Orbit Future Academy to be that bridging organization that helps to map industry requirements with the university's programs. So it's an in-between organization that kind of like playing a bridging role.
Yeah, I feel we need a lot more players like what Orbit is doing, specialized players. Like, for example, be it pure play manufacturing training courses, for example, for manufacturing jobs. Pure play, let's say, data science, for example. I'm just throwing throwing names out there. Because if what you're saying, and I rightly agree, especially when we are hiring, and I've been doing that for the last 7-8
Yes.
years, you basically look at the aptitude, you look at the communication, you look at other traits rather than what they have actually studied.
That's right.
I mean, most of them, they come, unfortunately, it's like either PR or
Yeah.
psychology or international trade, not really relevant to the jobs they're applying to.
Correct.
I think there's a massive need out there.
And there are more companies like us
Sure.
coming up because scaling is becoming very sectoral, specific.
Sure,
Like
sure.
banks, they need scaling only in certain
True,
areas.
true.
And,
But I think this has to be done in close collaboration, like you are doing with the government,
with the government or with the institutions.
with the institutions.
Yeah.
Correct. Perfect. Let's talk about the media landscape now. That is another space where you have deep expertise.
Yeah.
What do you think about the current state of media in Indonesia?
Oh, I'm very optimistic because I think having been in many countries, the media is a lot more free in this country, without doubt. I'm saying that.
Which is always great to hear.
Yes, without doubt, it is much more free in this country. They have freedom of speech. They're able to get away with a lot of things that they want to say. I doubt there are many countries where you can do that, which is one. The second thing is, I think it is natural for Indonesians to get their news from social media. And-
That's a whole lot of another 15
Yeah.
minutes of conversation I want to do with
Correct. We'll come back to that.
Yeah.
But the phenomenon here is because of social media, everybody is a journalist in some form or the other.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
You're a storyteller,
Correct.
and because you have social media handle, you'll tell stories of things happening around you.
Yeah.
And I think that ability has made Indonesians very pro journalism, very pro ability to tell stories, and they tell it also in good ways. You can see that things go viral very fast. in this
Very
market.
creative.
Very creative. Storytelling ability is a positive thing, I would say. So, I see the media landscape in this country is very healthy. Now, media is the only way that we've been alerted to the problems of pinjol. There are so many ills taking place, which is misuse of technology, misuse of AI, misuse of banking.
True.
If not for social media, we wouldn't be aware that these are issues that need to be dealt with. So I think the landscape in Indonesia is excellent. There's still a lot of opportunity for companies like your own company, Ketitik.com also is doing a lot of work in media. And there's space for everybody to exist in something that they specialize in.
Sure. Purely from a commercial perspective, how do you see social media impacting the revenue or for the publishers, for that matter?
Okay. This is a tough one because I think we're in a state of evolution where it's not yet ready. So we started with social media, everything is free, no budgets available there. And you look 10 years later, now large companies are allocating budgets for social media, which is a very good thing. They're understanding they get more value on social media than traditional media.
Sure.
Which is not very good for the traditional media guys.
Exactly.
But it is changing, right? So that's one thing. But I think, the important thing is social media budgets, how are they being spent? So you could say content creator is one role where it is more production.
Yeah.
So money is being spent on content creation itself, making the video, making the posts, thinking of the creative writing behind it, storyboarding it, etc. Which is an industry that's existed for a long time.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Then actually posting the post and then amplifying it is another media altogether. You need to have a budget to be able to amplify the things that you're saying and doing so that it gets more visibility over others things that are happening.
Sure.
So it's evolving as we see, and people are starting to allocate budget here. I'm saying that this shift will become quite massive.
Sure.
Like I don't see the value of a traditional media house in the next 5 years.
Wow. Okay.
It's rapidly declining. If you actually talk to the media companies today, you can see how rapid their decline is, and many of them are holding on because of they have a relationship with the advertisers.
But what do you think is how will this impact the overall society?
Okay, so the biggest problem of social media is inability for a reader to understand is that real or not.
Correct.
Propagation of fake news, or propagation of mistruths.
Correct.
Is very easy on social media. It's like WhatsApp University, right? Everybody jokes about WhatsApp University because just because it came on WhatsApp doesn't mean it's true.
Correct.
But people who see it on WhatsApp think it's true. Oh, it must be true. It came on WhatsApp.
Correct.
But that's what a media house does. It gives you credibility that if it came from a well-established media, they would have done their fact checking. They wouldn't put their reputation behind false truths.
True.
in an ideal world.
Sure.
But I would say that that function would not go away because people wouldn't know what they can trust. So how do you combine that need for credibility and being able to validate news, which comes from a big name, versus ability to socialize and spread news at a very effective cost? Because social media is the most cost-effective way of spreading news.
Correct.
And the answer lies is the big media companies are going to become social media companies. And you can see most of them have already started doing the transformation.
Yeah.
Some are transforming within the company. Some are setting up a separate company
to
and
do
experiment and learn.
Yeah.
But they are already seeing their demise up.
So I was reading a very interesting post about New York Times.
Yeah.
And how they came out of this vicious circle by going subscriber only.
Yes.
Right. And my argument was that it works for a developed economy
Where they want to pay.
where the user is willing to pay an X amount to have a clutter-free experience.
Yeah.
But as soon as you look at the developing economies where the likelihood of paying for news is very limited,
Very low.
very low, how does a large traditional media, which has been doing great work, has numerous reporters, massive cost on ground to constantly pull out news, compete with this? Because to be honest, for me, it's a societal issue.
Yeah.
As the lines will get blurred between what's true and what's not, be it with deep fakes, be it with voice modulators, be it with the reach which social has, more trickier it will keep getting for the society to function correctly.
True.
Right. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a very interesting time from an outsider's perspective to view it. But I feel that we need to have a certain amount of fixation out here, be it some government intervention or something. I don't know what.
Actually, it's simple, we must firstly recognize that this is evolving.
True.
Okay. So evolving means it's a state of play is different in different markets. It doesn't mean what works in the US what will follow here.
True.
Asia tendency to have its own models, which have nothing to do with following somebody else's model, right? So as you rightly pointed out, in the US people will pay, so the pay model works. They're paying because it's clutter free and it's also time saving.
Sure.
Like I do not need to spend 20% of my time on searching for what I need to read. I just can get it in 5% of my time.
True.
Right? So that's one part of it. But when I say it's evolving, it means what should you be doing here and how do you monetize and how do you build your costs to be covered by the revenues that are available at a given point of time. I think the answer lies in what is it today and having a format for that, and what's it going to be a year from now and being ready for that change. Transition. And what's it going to be 5 years from now, and then preparing yourself that if it were to go there, how is my organization going to handle that? And the answer lies in monetization. Sometimes it's not from advertising, it's not from subscription. It's from maybe content creation, or maybe you as a media company need to have different services which cross-subsidize. Like you could say some of the large media houses in the US actually are owned by other large media groups that have nothing to do with media. So they cross-subsidize the media play. Nothing wrong with that. I think media needs to be cross-subsidized when you're in the absence of a clear business model. Because then you will be able to take it forward and then in some time of 3 or 4 years, settle down into the new business model that emerges. The new business model has not emerged. It's still at play. Everybody is experimenting. However, there are some companies who have figured out, keep your costs low. If you keep your costs low, you have more experimentation, to play. Which means if you're a legacy media with a high cost structure, you are dead. Because you don't have the ability to experiment and extrapolate your models. But if you're a brand new media company, you have a lot of freedom to experiment and try new things. But you must be willing to go beyond the traditional definition of what is a media company and how are your revenues coming. Maybe the whole business model includes having another part of your business which generates all the money. Giving you spare time to develop the media business model as it evolves. So I know there are groups who own hotels, for example, and that pays the bills. While their media outlet is still figuring out what to do next. I'm not saying that's a format, but it's there could be another part of your business which is intentionally cross-subsidizing your media
expense
until the model settles down. I feel the model will settle down 3 to 5 years from now. It's getting there.
Okay.
And advertising is not the answer.
That's very clear now.
It's
Advertising is not the answer.
It's a no-brainer.
Because
the numbers
Google and
they
Facebook
don't
have the
translate.
monopoly. Yeah.
Pay-per-clicks don't matter.
Correct.
Pay-per-views don't matter. Their numbers are not translating to meaningful revenue.
Correct.
So what's the point? You get 1 million views and you make like $500. What's the point?
True.
It's not worth it, right? That equation doesn't make sense.
Absolutely.
What's the way to do it is don't have advertising. You find another model to sustain that.
It's such a transformational shift, right? I mean, for almost a century now, even while it was paper, it has always been the advertisement which was sustaining the media operations. Correct. But now this change needs to happen.
It's too early to look for the answers.
Look for the answers.
The answers are still in transition.
Yeah. Another transition which I want to talk about, something which we faced ourselves, which is the transition which is happening from text to video. Yes. Right. So we recently shut down our app completely, again to cut cost. Because after good 2 years, we realized that irrespective of how many customers we are acquiring and the great feedback which we were getting, the engagement always kept dropping on the text format. We tried some video formats within the app, great engagement. But running a video app yourself, it's insanely expensive.
Yeah.
And just doesn't make commercial sense, right? Let's talk about this transition also, right? Because especially during the COVID, again, I feel that there was this massive shift from text to video format, especially the likes of TikTok and short form content entering different markets. How does this affect the traditional media? That is one question. How does overall short form content affect the society as such, according to you?
Okay. I think, you should look at the underlying factors first, because this is actually a symptom of what is the underlying problem. The underlying problem is people's media habits have changed.
Okay.
And when I say people's media habits, it's not just our generation who have changed. We are also changed our media habits.
Of course.
But the young generation, for example, my kids, they never watch TV. The only time they watch linear television is if there's a live sports
game. Yeah.
Or even if there is some massive political problem somewhere or some disaster, they still will watch it on social media. Not exactly on linear television, right? Habits have changed. Secondly, they have also changed how the attention span has reduced dramatically. I'm not really in favor of TikTok or these, where you can flip the video and you keep moving from one to the other, because you got to be able to get their attention in the first 3 seconds.
Correct.
If you don't get it in the first 3 seconds, you get flipped. And if you got flipped, that video is gone.
Correct.
Right? So this is actually a phenomenon which we're saying is that the attention span is very short among the generation because so much is happening.
Yeah.
So how do you become captivating? How do you create captivating content in the first 3 seconds? So it's how you tell the story now that matters.
It has to be sensationalized, or gossipy, or
correct. So that's not a good thing either, because some stories should not be told that way.
Correct.
Right? Correct. So this is a big challenge for journalists, storytellers who want content to be reaching the audience the right way, the correct way, rather than having to force yourself to sensationalize everything and change the way that. So it's a big issue that has to be addressed. So if you're looking at people's habits have changed, how does the media industry have to respond? So one way you can respond is let's do TikTok way and let's do Instagram way. Short answer, yes. But that's not the answer to how people will actually consume good content and good information.
Correct.
However, consuming good content and good information now has become even more narrow, that there are certain people looking for certain type of content.
True.
For them, that 3-second thing won't apply so much. This is where AI is helping a lot, where if you are already flipping through content on your phone, it starts adjusting itself for what kind of content it starts giving you.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So it understands that, hey, you know what, Bipin is looking for health information. So it'll start pushing more health information to you. Or Bipin is out looking to buy a car. Through whatever algorithm AI learns it, then you'll start getting stuff about this new car has come, This is happening.
My big my big problem about these algorithms is that it plays with the basic human nature. Excitement, surprise, sensuality, gossip. Right? Look, I mean, irrespective of how evolved or how intellectual you are, these are urges, right? I mean, they've been wired in our DNAs for centuries,
Correct.
and it's so easy to get into that spree even on these scrolling patterns,
Yeah.
right? So you end up having a certain set of content which keeps coming to you again and again, which I personally I feel it's gonna be problematic.
Yeah.
Gradually, if not now already. I think it's gonna be problematic gradually.
Yeah.
But at the same time, how does a traditional news media adjust to this? How do they put out a story in 60 seconds? I mean, look. So there are a lot of stories which are happening in Indonesia, which are of importance to almost everyone.
Correct.
Right, and these can't be summarized in 60 words or 60 seconds.
Should not be.
And it should not be.
Yeah.
Right. Ideally, it should not be. But then all your users are on this medium.
So again, it goes back to it's a marketing transition, right? I don't think even media players. So, okay, first thing, everybody's already got a TikTok account.
Yeah.
Everybody's got a Instagram account.
Correct.
They're starting to understand a little bit more of how that works, and then they're allowing the algorithm to kick in. That if I can't find the users
will find me
because of the algorithm, right? So in a way, it's going towards a
and
better solution.
no one knows how the algorithm works.
Yeah. So that's a big secret,
Yeah.
but somehow it is trying to align itself to how users will start looking at the content and information. But a lot depends on the mood that you are in at that given point of time. Like when you wake up in the morning, you're looking for different type of content. When you're in the car and you're on your way somewhere, you're looking at different type of content. Is it able to serve you that type of content when you are in a different context? We don't know, right? So this is all up there. It's AI hasn't really perfected itself yet. However, the fact that big media companies have started putting their content onto these medium platforms is a good thing. Because imagine if it was not available.
Not available, yeah.
And let's say 90% of people spend their time on TikTok and Instagram,
Yeah.
but that content did not exist there.
True.
You
true,
would miss
true.
a huge opportunity.
Yeah.
So I think this large media houses and brands are looking at existing in this platform, and then they'll figure it out how it
True,
will work.
true.
Because you can't really monetize that content.
True. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let me close this loop
Sure.
with one of my favorite questions, which I ask everyone these days. Have you transitioned from the older ways of waking up and reading a physical newspaper? Have you transitioned to now maybe going on the website and reading or looking at the whole thing on the newspaper, or have you moved towards aggregators or social media? How do you consume your news now?
Okay. One thing is for sure, I don't wake up in the morning and
news.
find a newspaper.
Perfect.
Because it's very difficult to get your hands on a newspaper nowadays.
Yeah.
And even if you do get your hands on a newspaper, it is today's news.
Yes.
Sometimes you might be looking for something, it's not today's news.
Correct.
So you can't find yesterday's newspaper
Yeah.
in most houses.
True.
It gets used for something else,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. True.
So I quite like the idea that I'm not looking for a newspaper. It's all available online. And aggregators, yes, play a role to the extent that they're able to aggregate it well.
True.
Not every aggregator service is doing that properly.
True.
So one does have a few favorites, right? You'll have a few favorite media. But more or less, I found that nowadays, because of my interaction on so many platforms, somehow the other, some news or the other is on some platform or the other, which kind of guides you, oh, that's happened. I didn't know that. Now let me go to BBC or,
Perfect.
or to
And you read
CNN
the whole thing.
NDTV or whichever favorite to figure out what is the real story, because I got a whiff of it on social media. So the rest of the digital platforms somehow plays a role in tagging you, including your WhatsApp. 90% you'll get it first
get a
from
link
WhatsApp.
out there,
Somebody will post something saying that this happened, and you might go and then check out your reliable sources to find. So I like that process. That just helped me to probably not waste my time in reading a newspaper, because sometimes you can read a newspaper and figure out you got very little out of it.
True.
Because you got to read it first and then figure out, oh, why am I reading this? Right? And you're depending on the ability of the newspaper editors to push those stories forward.
Correct.
Which they think are important for you, which I may not necessarily find so. So I think I have more choice, and I have a lot more ability to screen what I read, because it's all digital. And I know many people around me are also happy with that ability to...
Most of the people whom I have spoken to also go through the same model.
Correct.
And then I always say, here goes the loyalty towards a particular media house.
Absolutely. That's gone. But you know, that's not a bad thing. I'll tell you why.
It's not a bad thing at all.
I'll tell you why. Because sometimes the loyalty to a brand did not come because you got news from that brand. It came from other values that brand stands for.
True.
It may be the newspaper of your hometown. or it may be that newspaper which reflects your values the most. It could be left, could be right, it could be centrist. So there are a lot of other factors why you have because 90% of the same news everywhere.
Yeah. Different words.
Different words.
Some cases same words.
Yeah. News buyers are kind of feeding everybody the same news.
Sure.
Your loyalty lies with the brand for other reasons that you associate with it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Let's get to the last
Sure.
chapter of this conversation. And I want to bring back what we started the podcast with. According to you, what does it take for an expat to succeed in Indonesia? You can talk about the traits, you can talk about assimilation, the culture. It's an open thingy. You can take it the way you want to.
Okay, I would say the number one is humility. A lot of expats who come into this market think that they come from a much more superior place. They don't know that Indonesia is very sophisticated, very open, very inclusive, and many people have learned lessons here which they would never have imagined they would learn. So humility is the number one reason to be able to succeed here. You must understand the market, the people, the culture, and be able to fit yourself into how things work here, and not force something that you have from outside to be brought in here, because
Don't carry the baggage of your experience and deploy it.
in fact that is really baggage, because that may get in the way of you succeeding here. So open your eyes, talk to the people, listen to the people, understand what's happening here. Start with humility. That's one factor I would say. Second is Indonesia operates differently from many other countries. It's very social network oriented. It's people, knowing more people, knowing people who know people. You know, that kind of effect of how
The
many
whole
people
network
you know is very strong here. So you should spend your time in expanding your network to not just fellow expats, but also fellow local colleagues, people who work within your office, people you meet, your clients, your customers.
Absolutely.
I think that's an important factor, so you don't live in a bubble.
Yeah.
A lot of people who live in a bubble here, you can, if your business is in a bubble, then you can live in a bubble. But if you're integrating with Indonesian society and your business is connected to Indonesia, you need to be able to expand your network.
Sure.
So that's the second thing. The third thing is, I think, pace of work, which is a surprise to a lot of people. Somehow Indonesians are happier people, and they are happier because they have time allocated for things that matter to them, which is not always work. So workaholics find it difficult in this country.
True.
You would find people have a good quality of life, and the sooner you realize that you come here, you have a good quality, go play golf, go on a weekend trip somewhere. That's what people do here. And if that becomes part of your life very fast, then you'll fit in well with the system here.
I have a very quick question on this. I'm sorry, I'm breaking the thought process. Especially on the pace of life thingy. I 100% agree. I have learnt it. I'm also one of the few who learnt it the hard way. Right, because if you come from India, where you have the carrot and stick method, right? Either money or boss, I'm going to terminate you. These are the only two ways in which the whole corporate functions. And then you come over here and you're in for a surprise. Right? Neither the carrot works nor the stick. It's just, I mean, the way I put it is to anyone who's asking me for an advice, who's coming new to the market, is that the only way you'll get things done is if your team really likes you as a person. I feel that's the only way. That's the only way they'll feel the ownership. If they like you and respect you for who you are, and if you understand them. So yeah, 100% agreed with that. But there are companies which are on global expansion spree, who are coming in with very stringent targets, limited durations. People are deputed as CEO or country head for 2 years, 3 years, right? And they want a certain growth. Is there a hack to expedite this growth while maintaining this pace of life, in your experience?
Okay. It's not an easy answer, but large companies are very successful and very big here too. So what's their mantra, right? So in large ways, if your people are looked after well, and if the people are feeling a sense of purpose, the big why of what are they doing, I feel is the biggest motivator in a company, as a sense of purpose of why they're working in that particular field.
Sure.
Like in my companies, most of them don't think twice about staying till 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night because they want to stay at night. The boss didn't tell them to do so.
There's a clear sense of purpose out there.
There's a purpose which they believe in. And in every company, you will only attract those people who will stay because they believe in that purpose.
Sure.
The ones who leave, churn is high in this market, right? People come and go, and a lot of time they don't fit in.
Sure.
But the ones who feel the sense of purpose stay, and therefore they go the extra mile. I think companies have to be able to, be able to tell or communicate the purpose well to the people so that they attract the right talent to stay and the right talent to apply and work.
Sure.
And they should be allowing people to leave if they don't fit.
True.
Don't try to hang on to people because churn is not a dangerous number. It's a good thing.
Correct.
Sometimes churn is a good thing. Losing the people who are not fitting in is a good thing for the whole team, right? So we must allow that process to happen and then be able to retain. You're almost like a mesh or a net in the ocean, right? That has got a certain size of the hole on the net. The small ones, fish can slip through and you allow them to slip through, but you hold on to the fish that needs to be with you. So you have to have that kind of a philosophy here when you are finding your teams to be purpose driven.
Perfect.
And I see that is the way to drive your KPIs, your goals, your revenues.
So everything has to be designed around that.
Has to be designed around that. I'm not saying it's not the same everywhere else, but it's probably a lot more like that in Indonesia compared to other countries.
Correct.
Every country has its own formula because of the people who work in your company. Here also there are multicultural. Right?
Yeah.
We should not forget that Javanese are different from Sundanese.
Sundanese,
different from, the ones from
folks
Sumatra.
from Medan, Sumatra.
Yeah, their behavior is also different, and the way they are tackling problems in the workplace is also different.
Very different. True.
And in many companies, when you have people from all these, it's almost like a global environment. To be honest.
So we spoke about humility. We spoke about pace of life. We spoke about assimilation with the local culture and people.
Yeah.
What else do you think?
Okay, these being the main things. I think the other thing is to understand the opportunity of Indonesia. Sometimes a lot of companies come in the wrong way, expecting one thing. In 5 years, they end up doing something else, which they should have done in the first place. If they had done their homework properly and understood the market and understood the opportunity of Indonesia, they may not have come and pushed some other business model here.
Sure.
So this is a classic mistake most foreign companies who come into this country do. They've got a global plan. They want to execute the global plan in every market.
Roll out everything.
There may be a different plan for this market. And this is proven. I mean, I know so many companies who started with one product, ended up doing something else. Including even me, when I first came, we started with some ideas and then we moved on and we learned, then we adapted and then we found. So you have to match what is the opportunity today. And you have to also be aware that that opportunity may change in 3 years and you should also be ready to change according to how the opportunity shifts.
Sure.
So this ability to spot what is the opportunity means listening to people and listening to other case studies maybe, and maybe doing some homework around coming to this country a few times, talking to people. It's worth doing that, understanding the opportunity of Indonesia properly. Otherwise, you could spend a lot of money, time, resources. I know companies who have left and never come back. They have operations everywhere else, but they do not have an Indonesia office. Which sounds strange, right? I'm saying when the biggest of companies are here, why do some companies not exist? Is because of the mistake somebody made in their market entry. It still means the opportunity exists for them to come back, provided the right person from that company comes here and builds a business.
No, absolutely. Okay, final thoughts on what do you feel are the next big opportunities in Indonesia? Let's say maybe in the next, for the next few years, 5 years,
5
for
years,
example.
10 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So, you know, the biggest challenge of this country is human resources. Quality of human resources, which is why we are in skilling, etc. But let's say that catches up and you are able to produce good quality of human resources. Then with the numbers in this country being fourth largest, 280 million people, then talent becomes something that can be offered here. Now, a lot of people don't understand that, yes, Indonesia could be offering talent because it actually does. In the old world, a lot of talent here went to work in the Middle East. Of course, they were menial jobs. They worked as drivers and cooks and maids and this and that. Then they started upgrading to a higher level of skills, and then because people is an asset and people can be sent out. Now you're finding a different breed of Indonesian people going and working elsewhere. So if
demographic dividend
has changed, demographic dividend kicks in. So if you're skilling people with the right skills, that could be something that can be offered to the rest of the world. India went through this.
Yeah.
India did not have a BPO industry
At all.
30 years ago.
Yeah.
It's only 30 years ago it started. Now Indians are everywhere,
Yeah.
doing all kinds of jobs.
I started my career at a BPO.
Exactly. So what stops Indonesia from being a BPO? It may not be for the same things, right? So they're good at design.
Yeah.
They're good at creative economy, arts. They do very good video editors. They're very good audio editors. Different skill sets.
True.
And imagine if there are millions of people skilled in that, and they can offer their services to the rest of the world. So I think that's one big area, which the opportunity of the talent of Indonesia being available to the rest of the world. In specific
Majorly
areas.
due to the scale.
Because scale, numbers are there. There are that many people. And because you can work from home or work from anywhere, you don't even have to send them overseas. They can just work for companies based out of here.
Remotely,
It's a huge opportunity. I think people have not even put their hands on where should you get into this market, right?
Sure.
But it's massive. Just take an example. If you had 1,000 Photoshop designers working for you, is there not work for them all around the world?
Oh, there'll be so much of work.
Yeah. Not only price point wise, but the quality of work.
True.
So people have to think that's a big opportunity of using the talents of the people here. So that's one part. The other part is, of course, what are the opportunities of companies outside coming into this country, right? I think energy transition is a big area. A lot of people are in renewable energy. They're looking at green energy, and startups are coming in all over the place. It's experimenting a lot, but it goes back to the basic principle of consumption. Wherever there is consumption, there is a need for a solution. With 280 million people, that's hands and mouths to feed, right? That much opportunity is there for agri products, food products, and therefore related to energy consumption needs for supporting that industry. So healthcare sector is huge, massive, just because of sheer number.
Sure.
So even if you were to take 10% of Indonesia, that's 28 million. That's bigger than most countries. So, and then Indonesia being divided into these provinces, and Java Bharat is right next to us. That's 50 million people. How many countries are 50 million people big?
True.
So, the opportunity of Indonesia really lies in finding solutions that can fit into these little parts of Indonesia everywhere. And there are a lot of sectors. I would say Indonesia, any sector you could look at, but some may have priority. Agri, healthcare, energy, three big areas. And then, of course, support services to that, like logistics, financial services, fintech, banking, still a huge area because transactions are needed everywhere.
Sure.
And to move product from A to B, you need logistics. E-commerce, etc., has become big only because there is people. And that's, I think, people are. If you're a business looking to enter Indonesia, you must understand the opportunity of people. And I think 60% of Indonesians are below 30 years of age. So you're talking about a massive number of people in going to have high consumption habits over the next few years.
Perfect. This was really helpful, Sachin. Thank you so much. A lot of gems for us.
I enjoyed also the conversation.
Thank you.